It's my honor to present a musical prelude to set the tone for tonight's award celebration. We will be hearing from South African-born cellist Thapelo Masita. Thapelo is a graduate of the Juilliard School. He's a faculty member of the Opportunity Music Project. He's the founder and director of the Free State International Chamber Music Festival, and also a founding member of the Uhuru String Quartet. Thapelo's artistic mission has been to champion community building and social change through music, to create training and educational opportunities for youth, and to empower women who have experienced domestic violence. Thapelo also plays with the United Nations Chamber Music. I'm very much looking forward to Thapelo, I'm going to turn it over to you and introduce the pieces that you'll be playing and take the floor. That will be great. Thank you.
Rick, your voice wasn't so good. I mean, I don't know why. Something is maybe.
People here keep telling me to move away from the microphone. So luckily, it's Thapelo's cello that we're going to be hearing. We'll work on the audio in the meantime.
But we do need everybody to mute. Everybody remember to mute.
I'll turn that one off.
All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi on Zoom and here in the room. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you all in this lovely home of Lance's. It's really a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to play some music for this festive occasion. The opening few pieces that I'll play come from an arrangement of the first Bach cello suite that I made, where actually I didn't touch any of Bach's work, but I did insert some pieces that I think are representative of me and where I come from, as well as I think the spirit of the music. So what you'll hear in this opening program, it will be a combination of two very beautiful spirituals, along with, let's see, how many movements of Bach? 3 movements of the first 3 movements of the first cello suite. So that will be the prelude, the allemande, and the courante. And I will intersperse those 3 movements with the 2 spirituals I mentioned before. The first is an African-American spiritual called There's a Balm in Gilead, and the second being an African hymn called Halemboza Tsepoyaka, which means when asked wherein my hope lies. So I hope you enjoy.
It's not that.
Thank you, Beppo. That was amazing. We're so glad that you're here with us tonight in what I'll call the Lance J. Brown Music Room. We will be hearing more from you later on in the evening during an interlude and at the end of the program. But I want to thank you for that superb performance now. My name is Rick Bell, and it's my great pleasure to be the MC tonight. To introduce our program, let me give the floor, and in fact, his chair, we had feedback problems and low connectivity problems up in the greenhouse. So let me give the floor to an architect who can make achieving the Sustainable Development Goals sound easy. A past president of AI in New York, the inaugural chancellor of the ACSA College of, that stands for the American College of Distinguished Professors, and the Topaz Award laureate back in 2007. Please welcome Lance J. Brown, FAIA, President of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization. Lance, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rick, and welcome everyone to our humble abode. We're so glad to see you tonight. I cannot tell you how pleasant it is to have this gathering take place with all of you here. As you know, my name's Lance Brown. I'm the president of the consortium, and it's my super great pleasure to welcome you. Before starting the program, I'd like to read to you a rather heartfelt statement recently fabricated by the CSU board. Priorities being what they are. I'll read. The Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization stands with the people of Ukraine. As architects, planners, and environmentalists, we promote the role of sustainable urbanization and resilient design in the planning of our cities. War's destruction and resilient design in the planning of our cities. War's destruction takes place. It's the opposite of sustainability, the neglect of resilience, and the antithesis of urbanity. Any conflict, whether it kills and maims people, however it mutilates and empties cities, is untenable. Whether in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Yemen, Myanmar, Kashmir, or Ukraine, the destruction and desolation of war leads to human tragedy, mass migration, climate change, and the end of civilization as we know it. Our purpose is to advocate for responsible and enlightened planning and design. We stand firmly with the 3.5 million architects around the world represented by the International Union of Architects, the UIA, past president was with us tonight, who condemn the invasion of Ukraine and express solidarity with all those suffering from conflict. The architectural community is fighting for a cleaner and better planet. We're distressed that war is doing the opposite. We must stay focused on endowing a better world to future generations. We reiterate the UN resolution calling for Moscow to immediately withdraw from Ukraine. Daily, I deplore the death and waste of precious resources, human and otherwise, underway. Thanks to the consortium and the board for agreeing to post this on our site and to share it with you this evening. On to the gala. The evening's gala celebrates the 14th anniversary of the CSU's collaboration with UN Habitat and the AIA New York chapter and other partners in support of a sustainable urbanization. The CSU is an organization devoted to building bridges between the United Nations and civil society, the design professions, business, academia, and allied organizations. Our gala has a dual purpose: to honor exceptional individuals who've engaged issues critical to making urbanization more sustainable, and to illuminate topics with the promise of making a better world. The mission of the CSU includes increasing awareness about emerging issues, facilitating knowledge transfer between and among policy and decision makers, and fostering connections, cooperation, and collaboration, while at the same time promoting the UN 17 Sustainable Goals, the SDGs, especially Goal 11, as well as the new urban agenda adopted at the 2016 Habitat 3 meeting in Quito, where we were present. We're looking forward to continuing our engagement by helping to animate the World Urban Forum, which will be taking place, we hope, in Katowice, Poland, from June 26th to June 30th of this year. Peace be upon us. Its theme, Transforming Cities for a Better Urban Future, resonates with the mission and purpose of the consortium. Tonight, we are honored by the virtual presence of many, many distinguished guests, including ambassadors, United Nations officials, university presidents, and the presidents of our leading architectural and urban design organizations. Thank you all for being here with us by Zoom, whether in New York or far afield. Before we continue, I'd like to share a special recognition of my fellow CSU co-founders, my good friends, James McCullough, FAIA, and Urs Gauchat, NJIT Dean Emeritus, who have since rotated off the board. Urs was present at Habitat 2, was a supporting founding member who played an important role in making the CSU what it is. Jim served as co-chair and was very committed to the cause of sustainable urbanization as much as he has been to affordable housing. I'm personally sorry they've retired from the CSU board, but I'm sure we'll continue to benefit from their wisdom. Thank you also, Elia Chelik, CSU board chair and founding member, for not leaving the CSU. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Urs. Thank you, Elia, my fellow musketeers. Without your efforts, the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization would not be what it is today. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts and contributions of Christine Schlendorf, a CSU stalwart who passed away this past May 6th after a long and courageous battle with cancer. Christine was only 46 years old. She had an architecture degree from Syracuse University and spent a year studying in Florence and traveling all over Europe. She joined Perkins Eastman in 1997, a colleague of Ted Liebman's, and had an amazing accomplished career designing schools in Hong Kong, Italy, Bahrain, Cairo, Ghana, and throughout the United States. She had an incredible gift for bringing people together. She helped to bring us together, and the world is a better place because she was in it. I miss her. We all miss her very much. And I'd like to have just a moment of silence in her memory before we proceed. Thank you. I would also like to thank our CSU board members and our advisory board chaired by His Excellency Talal Abu Ghazala. Their dedication to advancing the CSU mission has built bridges between the worlds of architecture, civil society, and the United Nations. I'd like to recognize UN Habitat and its executive director, our good friend, Maimouna Sharif, its New York office and director, Chris Williams, the AIA New York chapter, with its 6,000 members who've populated our many conferences, represented this evening by 2022 President Andrea Lamberti and Executive Director Ben Prosky. Thank you so much for being here. We thank the chair of the CSU Advisory Board, His Excellency, again, Dr. Talal Abu Ghazala, for his gracious support. And we thank our many partners and supporters of our conferences and programs. Please see your brochure for a list of those providing sustenance and sponsorship. Along with the brochure, please see our recent edition of the CSU News number 7. For those participating by Zoom, please know the chat room function will remain open throughout and beyond. Last, I want to recognize today's holidays of Saint Uro and wish our colleagues of the Jewish faith a joyous Tanit Esther and Purim, the happiest Jewish holiday of the year, and of course, a happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. We have a great program ahead. Please continue to enjoy the evening as we hear from our superb Master of Ceremonies, designated President-elect, good friend, good colleague, Rick Bell, FAIA. Rick.
Thank you, Lance. Thanks, Lance, and thank you as well to all of my fellow executive committee members, Alia Chelik, Tony Castro-Cosia, Nicholas Hamilton, and Ted Liebman. It's my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Sarbalan Khan, Past Director of the UN Division for Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC. Sarbalan Khan is a founding member of the advisory board of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, and was key and critical to the creation of the CSU. Back in 2008, as Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Information and Communication Technologies and Development at the UN, together with Elia Chelik, the chair of our board, he organized in collaboration with the AI New York chapter and with UN Habitat, a pioneering conference on sustainable urbanization in the information age. That conference inspired the CSU founders and led to many other great things. He's been a great supporter and friend to the consortium for sustainable urbanization from day one. Mr. Khan, the floor is and the screen is yours. Take it away. Sarbalan.
Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you very much, Rick, for your very kind introduction. Inspired by the networking experience that we had in the Global Alliance, United Nations Global Alliance for RCT for Development, some 14 years ago, as you said, I joined hands with other co-founders of the CSU to create a new kind of organization, using the power of technology platforms to serve as a network of diverse stakeholders dedicated to promoting sustainable urban development around the world. Since then, CSU has become a great success story, bringing together professional architects, urban designers, planners, and policymakers with United Nations agencies, foremost among them, UN Habitat and ECOSOC, connecting virtually to advance Goal 11 in particular of the SDGs and the new urban development agenda of Habitat 3. The CSU owes its success and dynamism to the vision and dedication of its co-founders and its broad membership, and the generous support of its founding patron, Dr. Talal Abu Ghazaleh, a global business leader and philanthropist who has been the honorary chairman of the CSU Advisory Board since its inception. In addition to founding the largest accountancy and consulting firm in the world, Dr. Abu Ghazaleh has dedicated his life to philanthropy and to service to the United Nations, leading innumerable initiatives in the fields of education, health, environment, trade, and sustainable development. He holds the CSU very close to his heart. Unfortunately, he could not be here because of many obstacles that are there, timing and the COVID and the traveling problems. But he has sent a short message, as he was instrumental in the creation of the CSU when he was the chairman of the United Nations Global Alliance for ICT and Development. So we are going to show his short video message now. So I hand over to Rick again. Thank you.
Sound.
He's muted. Okay.
We can't hear him.
We paused him now, I guess. He's muted.
Distinguished friends and colleagues, it is my great pleasure and honor to join you remotely at this annual gala of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization. The very fact that this virtual event is taking place on a global scale at this extraordinary, challenging time demonstrates the vibrancy and strength of this network of professionals and policymakers from across the world working together to support the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal number 11 on sustainable urbanization, in which I am proud that I contributed to its drafting and approval in my capacity then at the United Nations. I would like to pay warm thanks and tribute to the Consortium on Sustainable Urbanization Leadership, notably its president, Professor Lance J. Brown, and our great chairperson, Alia Shelik, in its chairmanship and leadership of this coalition, as well as members of the executive committee and all members for their dedication to the goals of urban sustainability and on their determination to make CSU the great success it is. I take pride in having been involved in creating the Consortium of Sustainable Urbanization as early as 2009 as the chairman then of the United Nations Global Alliance for ICT and Development. Coalition was created as a vehicle of dialogue
No feedback.
between the United Nations
I'm just happy it works.
Yeah.
and urban professionals and practitioners. Ladies and gentlemen, since then, this consortium has grown into a global professional network with an innovative program of events and conferences to advance sustainable urban development. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a transformative impact on many aspects of our lives. It is said that adversity brings out the best and the worst in humanity. Let me first give you the bad news. Most strikingly, this pandemic has laid bare, as never before, the fragility and vulnerability of our world in the face of adverse natural events. At the same time, more than ever before, it has demonstrated that in the face of adversity, there is no first, second, or third among us. That we are all vulnerable humans, that we are all in it together, that if we band together and use the full potential of science and technology, we can meet any challenge that nature is capable of throwing at us. This, I believe, is the lesson from this pandemic that we must not forget. We need to apply this lesson to the many challenges of urban sustainability as well. Digital technologies have developed and helped us cope with many of the adverse effects of the pandemic remarkably well. Yet, this is just the beginning. New and emerging technologies must be applied to transform our urban vision, planning, and design processes so as to integrate the sustainability and resilience imperatives into all things urban and beyond. This, I submit to you, is the great and most urgent challenge of today and tomorrow. Let's hope that we shall be able to see the humanity manage to construct a new world order with a universal leadership that can provide global leadership to address the problems in unison. I thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Abou-Ghazala, for those inspiring remarks and for all of the wisdom and assistance that you've given our programs over the years. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Christopher Williams. Chris, as many of you know, is the director of the New York office of UN Habitat, the United Nations Human Settlement Program. He took on that role back in March of 2018. Chris represents UN Habitat in intergovernmental and interagency processes and facilitates cooperation with partners based in North America. Previously, he was the executive director of the Water Supply and Sanitation Collaborative Council based in Geneva. His PhD is in sociology from the New School, and he holds a Master of Arts in Public Policy from the University of Chicago. The CSU owes much to Chris for his support of our mission and for everything else, Chris, that you do. Chris, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Rick. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Terrific. Well, I'd like to thank CSU for convening once again the gala and the award ceremony, and specifically in absentia. Thanks very much on behalf of the number of people that are here, of the awardees, Anati Bajuka, Judith Roden, Imbolo Mbui, Thomas Vonier, and thanks especially to the presentation we just heard, the video address from His Excellency Talal Abou-Ghazala, and the chair and CSU advisory board. I'm also pleased to be speaking and sharing words on behalf of Maimouna Sharif, the executive director of UN Habitat. And I'd also like to recognize Sabulan Khan and all of his work to help CSU come to be what it is, as well as Elia Lance, and to recognize Ken Lewis, president of the American Institute of Architects. I will be brief in my comments because we have quite a bit of speakers this evening, and really it's about the awardees, not ourselves. I'd just like to commend CSU for not only pulling together this gala, but also the fact that they've taken the challenge to have more of a global perspective and have engaged and become members of the Habitat Professionals Forum. This was not an easy task, and I appreciate CSU being part of a larger consortium of professional organizations to influence their contribution to sustainable urbanization. I'm also pleased with the efforts that CSU has made to diversify its membership, to bring in a younger cohort. I think this is extremely important for the longevity of this important initiative, and I thank CSU for taking the steps to do that. There are three very brief things I wanted to mention on the UN front that might be of interest to people participating tonight in the gala. The first is a report that the Secretary General released last September called Our Common Agenda. If you've not had a chance to look at it, it would be worth doing so. It can be easily accessed on the internet, Our Common Agenda. It was issued by the Secretary General at the request of the General Assembly. Member states had asked the Secretary General on the 75th anniversary of the UN to put forward his thoughts on where the UN should be in the next 25 years. What are the big issues we need to tackle? How can multilateralism be strengthened? What's the future of our planet? As His Excellency Talal Abou-Ghazala pointed out, that this is really an existential question when we look at peace and security, climate, the recent pandemic and health emergencies, how do we get our act together at the global level? So the Secretary General put forward a document, as I mentioned, our common agenda, and it does a number of things that I think open some spaces for CSU and others committed to sustainable development. One of them is a greater role for local governments in intergovernmental processes, local action at the really subnational level, and to make the UN system more inclusive and networked. It's important for the establishment of the Secretary General's Advisory Group on Local and Regional Governments. So UN Habitat and others have been tasked to work with local government networks as well as the UN system to provide the Secretary General draft terms of reference for this advisory group. And we recently had consultations with the President of the General Assembly to review multiple aspects of the common agenda. And one of them that seemed to be receiving strong support was the advisory group. So this will be an interesting space to watch at how multilateralism opens up just an inch with the inclusion of local and regional governments in intergovernmental processes and eventually in national planning processes. The second is the New Urban Agenda, which was mentioned earlier by Lance, is part of the DNA of CSU. We were there at the Quito conference. The 5th anniversary, really 6th, of that conference in Quito will be taking place on the 28th of April. That will be called the high-level meeting of the General Assembly to review progress on the implementation of the New Urban Agenda. For those that can remember, this is similar to the Istanbul +5 conference that took place 5 years after the second Habitat conference and the adoption of the Habitat Agenda in Istanbul in '96. So 20 years later, we're looking at an opportunity to reflect on the implementation of the New Urban Agenda. The President of the General Assembly has been quite creative. For the first time, has not restricted to the preparatory process to member states, but has created an advisory committee that includes both governments and the UN system, various constituencies of the New Urban Agenda. And those include, I mentioned earlier, why I had urged CSU to be part of the Habitat Professionals Forum. Habitat Professionals Forum is one of the 15 members of that advisory committee. And so I urge CSU in the coming weeks to work closely with the Habitat Professionals Forum. I know you've already done so, but to do so even more to support the development of their roadmap, which will be presented on the occasion of the high-level meeting as a contribution of the professionals in planning and architecture, quantity surveyors, realtors, the wide cross-section, 27 different associations of professionals as to what they would like to do moving forward to support the implementation of the Urban Agenda. Lastly, I'd like to comment on the World Urban Forum, and as Lance had indicated, not sure which way that's going. Peace be with us, definitely a good accolade. We have had consultations with Poland. There are different scenarios as to whether the meeting will go as scheduled at the time of 27th to the 30th of June, or whether it will be postponed to September or a later date. But there is quite a bit of discussion about that. One, I think, thing that everybody's agreed to is that given that there are over 1 million Ukrainian refugees in Poland, and Poland enjoys having over 1.2 million Ukrainians living in Poland over several generations as migrants, they have a very rich cultural and commercial relationship with the Ukraine that dates back a long time, back to the architecture of Kyiv. Many of the key architectural designs and buildings and the footprint of Kyiv has a Polish accent to it, and that reflects the architects at the time that were instrumental. So with that kind of background, it's going to be important for the World Urban Forum, whenever it takes place, to be a space where discussion on reconstruction, on urban displacement can be positioned prominently, can involve Ukrainians and the Poles, together with the rest of the international community who have had experience in similar situations in different parts of the planet in terms of using inclusive urban planning and promoting basic services as a way to recover from these kinds of conflicts and also meet the needs of transient populations, refugees, migrants, and internally displaced people. So I hope CSU will continue to prepare for and engage with the World Urban Forum, whichever way it takes. But I once again would like to applaud CSU for their efforts and their own growth, as well as their commitment to having these award ceremonies and the galas once a year. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thanks. Important and inspiring remarks. I'd say as a former local government employee, I'm particularly glad to hear about the opening of the Secretary General's Advisory Group to local and regional government. I'd like to think that AIA New York chapter presidents stay on forever. Lance J. Brown, Jim McCullough amongst them, Ken Lewis last year. But we're very, very happy that Andrea Lamberti is with us here tonight, and just want to acknowledge your election and taking on of the mantle. Next up, I'd like to introduce Nicholas Hamilton, who's the CSU board secretary. Nick's been remarkable in advancing an agenda of inclusion and activism. Nick will be speaking with us live from California tonight, but I'm happy to say we'll soon be moving back to New York and here on the West Side. So Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rick. And good afternoon from my vantage point. Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce Mbola Mwe and to present her with the CSU 2022 Sustainability Award. Mbola Mwe is an international renowned author. Her most recent book, How Beautiful We Were, was named one of the New York Times Book Review's 10 best books of 2021. Set in a fictional African village poisoned by the leaking oil pipelines of an American oil company, the book, as reviewed in the Times, shows us, quote, a decades-spanning fable of power and corruption that describes a nuanced exploration of self-interest, of what it means to want in the age of capitalism and colonialism. The CSU board was very impressed by the book. The injustices of this world can be so big and so public as they are today. And they can be incremental and hidden from view. Mbolo, thank you for sharing with the world such a complex meditation on acting when actions seem almost hopeless. And thank you also for how you put forward the perspectives of children in the book. Children, authors, designers, all seem to share this tendency to shamelessly envision a better version of this world and can be quite cunning in trying to bring that vision about. Thank you. Mbolo became known around the world for her debut novel, Behold the Dreamers, which has garnered her the PEN Faulkner Award, and she holds degrees from Rutgers and Columbia. Mbolo, using her strong voice, continues to describe the conflicts and challenges of a sustainable urban future. The award text reads, we honor the internationally renowned Cameroonian American author Mbolo Mwe for her extraordinary work in describing, invoking, and advocating for a more sustainable world. In her book, How Beautiful We Were, describing the standoff between a global petroleum company and the residents of a fictional African village, she talks about the importance of combating environmental pollution, seeking sustainability in human life, and creating cohesive communities, as she goes to the roots of environmental consciousness. Her contributions and leadership have touched upon an ecosystem of urban life, creating a literary awareness of the conflicts and challenges of a sustainable urban future.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is such an honor. I am, I am a novelist. I'm not usually invited to such occasions. So this is all a treat. And I'm glad that Nicholas is moving back to New York City. I'm sure you're glad, you're looking forward to that. I can't say that I was very aware of sustainability issues until I started researching and writing this novel. And I really came to understand how much injustice is tied to environmental degradation. And while researching the novel and writing about it, I really began to understand what needs to be done, not only for communities like the one in my novel, but also communities all around the world, because this novel was inspired by events around the world. And so I am very grateful for an organization like yours, because you do what I don't do as a novelist. As a novelist, all I do is tell the story. I don't have an agenda. I don't write novels to make a point. I write novels to tell perspectives, which we can have data, we can have numbers, but my duty is to put a human face to the struggles that we talk about. And so it means a lot to me that you guys are recognizing this. And as much as I do a lot of talking these days, it is still an honor and a treat for me that you guys gave me this honor. So thank you so much. And hopefully I'll get to meet some of you guys one day when I travel around and I speak to college campuses, and maybe someday I'll get to meet one of you guys. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Emma, for those very inspiring remarks. I think what you say about what needs to be done is very much the theme of the evening. I regret not having seen Limbe when I was working on an architectural project in Yaoundé. I was in Douala as well. But the images in the book of black sand beaches and beautiful botanical gardens are certainly most alluring. Given Limbe's role as the center of Cameroon's oil industry, I kind of wonder to what degree it influenced your portrayal of Kosawa in the book. And I remember a proverb, a Cameroonian saying, "Rain does not fall on one roof alone." I think we're all in this together. It's now my great pleasure to bring back to the program CSU President Lance J. Brown, who will present the next award.
I'm getting there. Be patient, please. Okay. So, one, thank you all to date, and thank you, Nick, and thank you, Mbola, for agreeing to join us, honoring us by allowing us to honor you. Rick, thank you for getting us this far. I now have the honor of introducing Dr. Judith Roden, this year's recipient of the CSU President's Award. Judith is a philanthropist with a long history of US higher education. She was the president of the Rockefeller Foundation from 2005 to 2017, when we became more familiar with her than before. As head of the Rockefeller Foundation, she spearheaded the 100 Resilient Cities, which worked with cities to develop strategies and approaches to building their resilience. Supported by 100 Resilient Cities, cities developed integrated resilience building solutions for the natural and built environment, as well as for their most critical and social economic problems. I'm very familiar with the 100 Resilient Cities program because many of my graduate students delved deeply into those cities around the world and chronicled not only their selection, but their progress, which was beyond impressive. From 1994 to 2004, Judith served as the president of the University of Pennsylvania and the first permanent female president of an Ivy League university. As president, Judith guided the university through a period of unprecedented growth. Subsequently, she became president of the Rockefeller Foundation. Following the devastation of Hurricane Sandy in 2012, very well known to us, Judith was appointed to co-chair New York State 2100, a commission charged with finding ways to improve the resilience and strength of the state's infrastructure in the face of natural disasters and other emergencies. Among her many awards and honors, she was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences In 1990, she's been named as one of Crane's 50 most powerful women in New York and has been recognized on Forbes magazine's list of the world's 100 most powerful women. Her PhD is from Columbia, a thinker and a doer. She catalyzes institutional and global transformation and improvement. Having seen Judith present awards to others, including our friends Ron Schiffman and Juan Close, it is now our extreme pleasure to present ours to her. The award citation reads, "We honor Judith Rodin for her extraordinary leadership and initiatives in pursuit of a more just, inclusive, and resilient urbanizing planet. Dr. Rodin's success in leading the University of Pennsylvania and the Rockefeller Foundation has changed the world. She has been a pioneer in advocating for resilience, women in leadership, and impact investing. Under Dr. Rodin's innovative leadership, the Rockefeller Foundation's 100 Resilient Cities program and the Global Resilient Cities Network has succeeded in its endeavor to help cities around the world engage and confront the threats, challenges, and opportunities of this most critical century." We now have Judith Rodin.
I'm delighted and honored to receive this award from the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization. I want to especially acknowledge Lance J. Brown, President, and of course the CSU Board, and the Advisory Council, chaired by His Excellency, Mr. Talal Abu Ghazala. I can't imagine a more critical moment for your efforts to bring to center stage the critical role that cities must and will play in assuring a more sustainable and resilient future. My own work with our team at Rockefeller, creating and leading 100 resilient cities around the globe, has shown that this effort must be strategic, intentional, and holistic. But often, as you know, cities fail to act until a crisis hits. A hurricane, a tornado, a wildfire are just a few examples of what cities around the world have been confronting at an accelerated pace. We saw it here in New York with Sandy and Ida. And while a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, to quote an old cliche, and significant improvements are often then undertaken, building resilience and focusing on sustainability before the problems emerge is clearly the more efficient and productive option. That's why I'm such a fan of your work. As your mission articulates, you advocate for efforts that begin in the design and planning phase, and you favor cross-sectoral approaches. Your significant outreach to connect global thought leaders and to promote and disseminate best practices assures that the most usable and tested ideas are broadly adopted, eliminating wasteful false starts and misallocation of resources. The world is finally catching up, with the focus of governments, the capital markets, and the private sector now squarely on sustainability and resilience. And of course, the infrastructure bill passed last November and now being implemented will raise US infrastructure spending to its highest share of GDP since the early 80s. This national government investment can jumpstart solutions in cities where significant innovation is already occurring. Your initiatives will be critical to assist in the visualization of the best of these solutions and actions for addressing climate change and building resilience in urban areas. Secretary Buttigieg recently told an audience that the federal dollars would be aimed at projects that are shovel-worthy, not shovel-ready. Your great work can help define that difference. Again, many thanks for honoring me this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith, for those equally inspiring words. Investments in infrastructure, it's spending and the ability to use federal funds in cities to enhance sustainability efforts and resilience are certainly at the top of all of our agendas. The Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, from its inception, has brought people together in all sorts of ways to certainly support the Sustainable Development Goals and to advocate for ways to implement necessary initiatives. At the same time, tonight, we find pleasure in celebration, the celebration of achievement, of excellence, and of the environment, and also of the acoustic pleasures of diversity. I think that was a phrase that you used last year, Urs, if you're on the call. Thank you. Music is one of them. We now can enjoy a short musical interlude with cellist Thaplo Sita, and we will resume the award ceremonies a few minutes after this, after the musical intermission, with awards for Dr. Anna Tabjuka and Thomas Panier, followed by closing remarks by Chris Williams. Thaplo, if you're hearing me in the next room, could you take it away and maybe explain a little bit what we'll be hearing?
Yes. Hi, I hope everybody can see me well. I think the frame looks good. So for our little interlude, we'll have a mixture of music for both the court, which is not a sign of something sustainable. How's that? In the urban world. So we have music from the court and music for the people. So the first two pieces you'll hear are a set of minuets. That's our music for the court. And the last piece, very short piece, is a jig, and that's our music for the people. So I hope you enjoy. Great.
Thank you. Thank you again, Pepelo, for that most inspiring performance. It's so great to have live music for the celebration. It's now my great pleasure to introduce CSU Board Chair, past President and co-founder, Dr. Alia Pekin-Celik, who will present the next award. For those who have not met Alia or don't know her well, I would just add that among her other distinctions and achievements, she headed the New York office of UN Habitat and directed preparations for the Habitat 2 conference in Istanbul. At UN Habitat in New York and in Nairobi as well, she worked primarily on building technologies, sustainable urbanization, energy, and gender issues. She was chief of the Economic and Social Council and Interorganizational Cooperation Branch in the UN Department of Social and Economic Affairs. Alia, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your kind words, Rick. It is my great pleasure to present the CSU Global Award to Dr. Anna Tibaijuka, UN Habitat Executive Director Emerita. Dr. Tibaijuka is from Tanzania and has served since 2010 as a member of the parliament. She has also served as Tanzania's Minister of Lands, Housing and Human Settlements Development. I was fortunate to work with her at the United Nations when she served as the USG and the ED of the Habitat Program. She was the second highest ranking African woman in the UN system. She was Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Dar es Salaam before. She was also a member of the Tanzanian government delegation to several United Nations summits, including the Habitat 2 conference in '96 in Istanbul. Among her many honors and awards, she has received the Gothenburg Award for Sustainable Development in 2009 and the Prince Khalifa bin Salman Award in 2016. Now, I would like to read the text for the award. We honor Dr. Anna Tibaijuka for her lifetime commitment to the United Nations and public service. We applaud her dedication and in particular her extraordinary support of affordable housing, the backbone of her work. We salute her national and international leadership addressing the most pressing urban issues. In line with the goals of the United Nations, she oversaw major reforms resulting in the UN GA upgrading the center she headed to program status and renaming the United Nations Human Settlement Center program. And now Dr. Tibaijuka's speech will be read by Chris Williams.
Thanks very much, Alia, and thank you once again, Lance, and all those on the call. Let me read the award acceptance speech of Dr. Anna Tibaijuka, and I just want to preface this by saying that given the time difference, it was very difficult for her to attend, and she's also been quite unwell. She's okay in general, but been quite unwell for the last couple of weeks, and so she asked if I could read her speech on her behalf. I would like to thank the Consortium of Sustainable Urbanization, now entering its 13th year, for giving me this prestigious award. It's wonderful to be recognized for one's work. I have been blessed with the opportunities to contribute to sustainable urbanization as a woman activist, a professor, an Undersecretary General of the United Nations, a Minister of Lands, Housing and Human Settlements Development, elected member of Parliament in Tanzania. I've also been blessed with good friends, many of whom are here with us tonight, to which I owe much of my success. Throughout my career, I have always been interested in contributing to housing and urban development, to economic growth. Trained as an economist at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences in Uppsala, I developed a sharp eye for triggers of growth and the interface between rural and urban economies. I came to appreciate the significance of housing as both an economic and a social determinant of sustainable development. I observed people moving from their relatively better living environments in sparsely populated countryside to chaotic and life-threatening conditions in urban slums. God, why did they move? The answer was an economic one. They moved not because they will be better off, but because they expected eventually to be better off, if not them, at least their children. So it is the expectation of a better life and a better home that pushes us to move. Yet for many years, housing, urban development, and related activities were either treated as an adjunct to economic and industrial policy, or at best, as marginal items in economic planning processes. After several decades of debate on what housing might contribute to economic growth, it is now widely held view that housing and urban planning are not peripheral activities, but central forces of sound economic development. That is, investments in housing and urban development yield a rate of return at par with investments in transportation, power, communications, and industry. The rate of return will grow exponentially as the proportion of humanity living in cities moves from its current rate of 53% to over 70% expected by 2050. In my book, Building Prosperity, Housing and Economic Development, I argue that contrary to earlier theoretical and policy hesitancy on the nature and relevant importance of housing, today there is clear empirical evidence that demonstrates the multifaceted ways in which housing and urban development impact on the process of overall economic development. No country has overcome poverty without adequately housing its people. It is groundbreaking that the international community has elevated housing and urban development among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You will recall that in 2000, the Millennium Development Goals confined housing and urban development to just one target on slums, itself an extraordinary feat at the time, orchestrated by none other than the late Nelson Mandela and the late Kofi Annan. Habitat 3 conference in Quito in 2016 further elevated housing and urban development by adopting the New Urban Agenda as a roadmap to harness the power of housing and urbanization to help us realize sustainable development. Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Undersecretary General Maimouna Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat, my successor, have done much since 2018 to build upon the work of his predecessor, that is before Secretary Generals, both Ban Ki-moon as well as Kofi Annan. They have proclaimed urbanization a megatrend that will shape humanity in the 21st century, one that warrants a whole of system approach. Much has happened to the environment agenda in 2005. The urban agenda is today going mainstream. While we have cause to celebrate, we must look critically at the road ahead. The pandemic, climate change, and the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine, Yemen, and other hotspots in Africa all pose existential threats to humanity. They are destroying lives, livelihoods, and homes at scale. And women and children they support are hardest hit. It will be crucial moving forward, including at the high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the 28th of April, 2022, to position the New Urban Agenda as part of the solution to these crises. We must demonstrate clearly how housing and planning reduce the impact of health emergencies, mitigate climate change, and offer durable solutions for peace and security. Ultimately, the Habitat Agenda, adequate shelter for all, and sustainable human settlements developed in an urbanizing world holds part of the solution to our common goal of peace and prosperity. Thank you for this award. I wish you all success carrying forward the urban agenda. Anna Tibaijuka.
Thank you, Chris, and inspirational words from Dr. Tibaijuka. Thank you, Anna, for all that you do and all that you've done to make the world a better place. It's now my great pleasure to introduce the recipient of our final award of the evening, my friend Thomas Fournier, who recently completed his term as president of the International Union of Architects. Tom's environmental advocacy journey began as a young architect asked to testify before Congress, testify about the issues of energy conservation and natural energy resources, including solar power and wind energy. Later on, serving as AI national president, this was maybe what, Tom, 40 years later or so. His commitment to sustainable urbanization has stayed exactly the same, deeply entrenched. In his inaugural remarks at the National Museum of African American History and Culture as AI National President, Tom spoke of, quote, deep convictions about the power of architecture in society and how we must seek social progress, equity in human affairs, and responsible environmental practices. And Tom, if I recall, you picked that location, which had newly opened for more than its symbolism. Subsequently, as UIA president, Tom has encouraged us all to look around and find ways to contribute to making the physical environment better, and referring to the wonderful work architects did in New York and New Jersey after Hurricane Sandy to create policies that improved environmental quality. Now, tonight, Tom, it is our opportunity to praise your work. The award text, the envelope, please, reads, Thomas Vanier is an architect, activist, and institutional leader who has reshaped and reanimated the profession's engagement with green design and sustainable urbanization. As founder of AIA Continental Europe, president of AIA National, and subsequently the president of the International Union of Architects, Tom has charted a course that has linked architectural design and community planning to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and the environmental imperatives of a world beset by climate crisis. With unfailing optimism and energy, despite jet lag, Tom has been tireless in advocating for the importance of design in facing the challenges of the day. In all seriousness, Tom, this is well-deserved, and I thank you for being here. And why don't you take the seat and be on this computer?
Great, thank you so much.
Reception.
Rick, thank you for those kind remarks. Thank you to the consortium for the wonderful privilege of being with you here tonight in New York. It's fitting that you mention the International Union of Architects, UIA. It was founded 74 years ago in Lausanne, Switzerland by architects from 27 countries. Its purposes can be summed up by its initials. U for unify the profession, I to influence public policies relating to buildings, and A for advance society through design. The founding people who created UIA had in common the belief in the power of architecture to improve human affairs. The first president of the UIA, Auguste Perret, a Frenchman, was a product really of the Second World War and the terrible destruction that war brought, especially to Europe, but not only to Europe. And he, with his brother and a number of other architects, rebuilt parts of Europe that had been devastated by war, in particular Le Havre, the great port in France, which had been leveled by the Allied forces, and which is now part of World Heritage on the UNESCO list. This belief in the power of architecture to improve human lives exists all through our profession. And I'm going to close my remarks tonight just by mentioning the Pritzker Award given yesterday to Francis Quéré, a wonderful human being from Burkina Faso, a very bright young man who won a scholarship to go to Germany and to study architecture, and who is recognized for his wonderful work that only a designer could produce, to teach people how to build with indigenous materials and to use skills that they develop for themselves to make their lives better through design. This is the wonderful promise of our profession. It is the wonderful gift that we as architects have to contribute to society. And I want to express my appreciation to President Lance J. Brown for his leadership of the consortium and for welcoming us into his home tonight here in New York. It's been a wonderful experience. I'm grateful to Lance and to Rick and all members of the consortium for the work they do. And I thank you for the privilege of this honor you've given me. Thank you.
And thank you, Tom, for all that you do to engage the profession and create sustainable cities throughout the world. We'll have brief closing remarks. If you're willing, Chris, if I could bring you back for any last thoughts, and then Aliyah and Lance, But without further ado, Chris, if you're still there, you've been so generous in talking through other people's remarks. Closing thoughts?
Yes, very much so, Rick, and I'm really happy that you've kept this momentum with the award despite the challenges of COVID, and I think we should not take that for granted. I've been amazed at the enthusiasm and interest that you bring, as well as the ability to soldier on. I think the first one you did under COVID was really a path-breaking effort. The mixing, as you now take for granted on this space, with music interludes and people relaxing a little bit and eating or drinking while they attend this gala to sort of stimulate the kind of environment we would have if we were in person. And I applaud the effort to just continue with that rather than put your hands down and say that you can't continue because of COVID and this is not face-to-face, so therefore we can't do it. So kudos to you for keeping this despite the pandemic, and we do look forward to a 2023 gala that will be in person, that will allow for that human exchange that we all, I think, are yearning for. But the fact that you've kept this going over the last 2 years, despite the pandemic, is really quite extraordinary, and will make the ability to have in-person galas in the future all the better. So thanks very much.
Thanks again, Chris. We're really glad that you're here with us tonight. It looks like you're still in the office.
I'm afraid to say I am.
I'd like to invite Board Chair Aliyah Jellick back to the virtual podium, let's call it, lectern.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure and honor to see that you are supporting CSU and guiding it to be a strong institution, helping to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and implement the new urban agenda to improve living conditions in cities around the world. I wanted to bring to your attention that when we have conferences and lectures on topics related to cities that bring UN delegations, professionals, NGOs together, we publish the proceedings so that everybody can reach out to the solutions and challenges discussed in these events. Our 7th book, entitled Cities Matter, talk about resilient cities in the COVID-19 era. It consists of the proceedings of our latest flagship conference of 2021. Our books can be found online. We have enjoyed seeing you at this gala, and we hope that you will continue to honor us by your presence at our Green Cities lecture and the flagship conference organized in partnership with UN Habitat, UNDESA, and AIA New York chapter that will take place on Wednesday, May 18, 2022. The topic will be climate change and buildings. Thank you very much for your involvement, your interest in the sustainability of our cities and of our planet. Thanks.
Thank you, Aliyah. Well, we're coming to the back end of our program. I hope that everyone has been as rewarded and nourished by the people we've honored as we have by them. I'd like to express my great congratulations, of course, to all of our honorees, to Mbolo Mabue, who I hope one day to meet in person, knowing that she's a resident of the Hudson River Valley, Judith Roden, who has been just a champion for everything to do with the work that we're involved with. Anna Tibaijuka, who I was reminded spoke at the very first event of the CSU in the ECOSOC chamber at its founding, and who has been a guiding light for so many ever since that time. And of course, Tom Varnier, who is a very unusual fellow. I think we in the architectural community have known him for many, many years and in many, many guises. He was the president of the American Institute of Architects in the United States before he moved on to his 3-year term at the UIA. And if you were ever so disposed, you could Google Tom's writings. He's a constant commentator on the state of the world, the state of the cities, the state of architecture. He understands it viscerally. He has a wonderful hand. He can draw it, but he can also think it. To our great appreciation, is a promoter of the Sustainable Development Goals. The UIA is not the UN. It doesn't have to meld with it, but it does so beautifully. And I've come to know also the UIA somewhat better this year, because the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, under the good guidance of Chris Williams, 2 years ago applied to and became a member of the Habitat Professional Forum, which is an organization of 28 professional organizations around the world, all of whom work in concert to change the world for the better. And the UIA, this year, the chair of the Habitat Professional Forum, Mona Rady, is the representative of the UIA, which rotates. She's become quite a good friend. And we are all working in concert to produce a document called the Roadmap to the Post-COVID Future, which will be unveiled at the April High-Level Professional Forum, and again at the World Urban Forum in Katowice, hopefully, or beyond. And we have been intimately involved with the construction of that document. So our tentacles intersect greatly with many of our honorees. I think Aliyah has shared with you the many things we have done, and I've just spoken about a few things that we do. Ted Liebman and I this morning represented the CSU on an international program in Dubai on technology and affordable housing. We have many irons in the fire. There's one coming up in June that I'd like you all to look for. It takes place June 9th through 11th. It'll take place at the Cornell campus, the Cornell Tech campus on Roosevelt Island. It'll be a continuation of the affordable housing and sustainable communities dialogue we've been having. So please visit our website for all of these upcoming events. I think hopefully Rick mentioned we'll go to Rotterdam in the beginning of April. Welcome Nadia Nalina, and we'll hear from 2 people involved in what the Low Countries are doing, obviously great to do with their open space and water. So we have a lot of things underway. We're very, very grateful to each and every one of you. I don't think I can say as sincerely as I would like to how much your support means to us now and over the years. It's financial support, but it's also spiritual support in support of the mission that we constructed. And without your fellowship, I don't think we'd be nearly as capable in our commitment to going forward. So I thank you all for that. I look forward to another year of our activities, another time of gathering, hopefully in person next year, which I know we would all like. I again want to thank all there's been quite a magnificent team involved in constructing this evening's event. James Bessoir and Sarah Hamza and Irena Zubacek and Rick Bell, and who am I forgetting? There must be many others. Ted, who's helped. So for all of those on the team, we love you. We thank you. You're all precious to us. And now I'm going to give the floor or the room back to Tapala Masita, our brilliant cellist, to serenade you before the chat room. And then we'll hear from Rick again. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you very much. Before I play the final 2 pieces of this evening's program, I'd like to first give a short thank you to Lance for the invitation, and to Rick as well for finding me and allowing me to be part of this wonderful celebration that the consortium is holding this evening. Thank you also to the board for agreeing to have me here as the evening's musical relief. I'd like to leave you with two movements of Bach once more. The first will be an allemande in a different suite now. We are in the key of D minor, perhaps normally considered to be a bit more serious, but I invite you to think more of fantasy in the next two pieces that I play for you. Imagine in the first work a sense of a dream-like, yes, and some seriousness, but the last movement that I'll play for you is full of gestures that remind one quite often of things like sword fighting and fleeting footwork. So I hope you enjoy it, and congratulations to the honorees, congratulations to the CSU for this wonderful event, and thank you all for having me. So you'll hear the Allemande and the Courante from the D minor suite of Johann Sebastian Bach.
Do this from an office computer. You've really added so much. I think Bach said it's the special province of music to move the heart.
Indeed.
And you indeed did that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd also, on behalf of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization and its board, like to thank all who attended tonight, especially commend the honorees. Tom, you're here, but everyone in Bolo, we're sorry you're not with us in person, but thank you so much for participating earlier. And Lance and Irma for hosting this. This is better than the century. I'd like to become a member. Thank you all. We're going to keep the chat room open as long as it's active. When the conversation dies down, we'll just cut it off and see you at the flagship, as Aaliyah said. And thank you all for participating remotely. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.